Hi, I'm Tim from Vintage and Classic, and welcome to the second of our blogs, or video blogs, vlogs I think they're called, about our cars in our personal collection. Last time in our first vlog we featured our 1904 London to Brighton runner, and today we're going to talk about our 1952 Morgan Plus 4 Drop Head Coupé. If you like our vlogs and our videos, please like, share, and all of that stuff. And also, if you're a member of our Platinum Rewards Club, which is part of our competition page, if you know what I'm talking about, then you'll get to see this vlog first before it goes out onto public release. And also there'll be an opportunity, a free entry competition to win some time with us in the cars and all our collections, spend an afternoon with myself and Wendy, and just have a go in some of our cars. We're doing a competition as well for the Humberette, which will be live, I think, if you're watching this, which is again completely free to enter. There's free to enter competitions as well for the Silverstone Classic tickets. Well, it's a Silverstone Festival now, I believe it's called. That's at the end of August, and also an opportunity coming up to win tickets as well for our draw cars. You can enter free if you're a Platinum Rewards Club member, and that's all the benefits as a community. Anyway, that's another story. So let's talk about Morgan first, and then we'll talk about this car. Now, Morgan, as I'm sure you'll know, is one of the quintessential names and one of the iconic names in British sports cars. And the company was formed in 1910 by Henry Morgan. He originally built actually a car. He went to Morgan College, and the company's based in Morgan in Worcestershire. He built his first three-wheeler car, which was a single-seater car, and exhibited it at the 1910 Motor Show in Olympia, and didn't attract many orders, and realised that he needed to make a two-seat car, which they introduced in 1911, and that was fantastic. And right from the start, he was involved in competition and motorsport, and actually held some records at Brooklands, that kind of thing. I'm not going to go on and on about a history lesson. You can look all that stuff up, but the competition nature of Morgan, and particularly trials, actually, interestingly, because this car has two spare wheels at the back, because it's all the early models were always involved in trials, because of the competitive nature of Morgan, and it still continues. We actually race in the Morgan Challenge, and you'll have seen that car on our last feature. That rooted in competition, and in Le Mans as well. They were classically involved in the 60s Le Mans cars and won their class. Had really cemented the relationship, and the early demand for Morgan cars exceeded supply, and famously there was always a great big long waiting list for a Morgan, and even at one time up to 10 years, and nowadays it's 6 months, I believe, and the Morgan factory produces around 850 cars. Recently it passed from the family ownership that it's always been under right from its inception to an Italian investment conglomerate, which is kind of a shame, and it seems that that's the way things are these days. And as you know, Rolls-Royce, Bentley, they're all owned by foreign investors nowadays, but they still have their roots, and they still are very much a British company. They employ 250 people in the Malvern Links up there, and they still make cars which are really iconic, and you know, they're fabulous cars if you want modern day reliability coupled with the classic looks, and then that's what you can get from a Morgan. The other thing, actually, interestingly, the first thing that people say, we've got other Morgans and we race a Morgan, the first thing they say to you when they stop you is that, oh, they're built on a wooden chassis. And actually that's a bit of an urban myth, so I have to let people down a little bit gently. We don't want anyone to feel stupid, but there is a reason why people think that they're built on a wooden chassis, and that's because all Morgans, even to this day, are coach built, which basically means when they built coaches and horses, they were built with an ash wooden frame clad in aluminium, and this car is indeed coach built, as are modern Morgans, and that's where that urban myth comes from, that they're somehow built on a wooden chassis. Anyway, more about this car. So this is a very rare car indeed. It's one of only 433 ever made. It's a Drop Head Coupé. Now, the difference between this car and its sibling at the time, which was the Roadster, was that this car was more expensive, It was more luxurious, if you like, a little bit more comfortable, but it still has the same kind of performance as the Roadster, being powered as it is by a just over 2 litre standard Vanguard engine. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But the important thing was, and the reason why this car is particularly rare, it's a flat rad drop head coupe. So most people will be aware of the Morgan shape with that beautiful cowled radiator, and that wasn't introduced until 1952. And this is a 52 car, so it's one of the last flat rads. These cars, the drop head coupe, were manufactured between 1950 and 1968, and as I say, 433 examples were made. There were some pre-war cars in the drop head coupe style with a different, smaller engine, and that's really where its bodywork and style is rooted. It's a lovely looking Art Deco style body with its roots in the 1930s, and we love it. We think it's really pretty, and particularly with the roof up, it's just got that iconic shape. Really lovely car, and to drive it keeps up beautifully with modern traffic. As I say, it's got just over a 2 litre engine. It's got hydraulic brakes to drums. We've actually converted this to, or it's been converted to dual circuit brakes, which I'm not going to get too technical, but basically it's a safety thing really. It keeps up with modern traffic, and we fitted an electric fan to this just to make sure it doesn't overheat on those hot sunny days, and it is really comfortable to drive. Actually, the seats, the bottom of the seats, they're leather, but inside is like an inner tube, and you fill it with air. It's amazing, and it is super comfortable, and you can adjust that just by letting a bit of air out or putting a bit more air into your liking. And sitting in there, you're just surrounded by this plush, lovely wooden interior with leather, and you can bowl along the country lanes with the roof down. Okay, and also it's a lot easier actually to get in and out of, because the doors open. They call them suicide doors, but you've got so much more room to get in and out, and actually with the doors hinged forwards like a Morgan Roadster, you have to be a little bit nimble to get in and out, but that's a much easier way to do things. And just sitting in there, actually the other thing about this car, the way that it is shaped at the back, means that you actually have a bit of a luggage space behind the driver and passenger, which means that actually it's a great car for touring, you know, for weekending, going away, and we've used this car on events where we've had a wonderful time, and it just keeps up with everything really. 2 spare wheels at the back, as I mentioned earlier. Morgan's famously competed in trials. And actually, talking of trials, we do a lot of trials with the Vintage Sports Car Club in our 1924 Bullnose Morris, and we're going to be doing some coverage of a trial as one of our vlogs. We plan to do that when they start in the autumn and then into the spring next year. But trials were again part of Morgan's heritage and part of the competition heritage of these cars, which really made them popular with the public. And you know, driving a car, it's hand built. They're still hand built today, and they just have a different feel. They have a feel of quality, and rather like a Bentley or a Rolls of the same period, it just has that feel of quality which you don't get in a production car. I'm going to say like an MGB. There we are. Sorry, we have MGBs, but they're still lovely, but this just has that different feel. It has that quality feel, rather like comparing, I'm going to probably upset some people now, but comparing, say, an old Mini with a Mercedes. You know, it's that kind of difference. It's that kind of Golf. I've just been asked a question actually, and the question is, why are they called suicide doors? Well, this is why: because they're hinged from the back and they're unsafe. And if you were a passenger and this door came open and you're holding on to it, you might get dragged out the car, and that's it. That's the only reason. And it was a name that was coined in the 1960s apparently, and it was an unsafe door. Not many cars are built with suicide doors anymore. I think one of the very newest Rolls Royces actually has suicide doors, but anyway, that's the reason why. Now, I want to talk about the engine in this car. Now, Morgan never made an engine, so they always use other manufacturers' engines, and in their very early three-wheel cars they're famously using motorcycle engines, V-twin engines, which were mounted at the front, normally air-cooled, and they yeah, they famously were very light cars, so they had a fantastic power to weight ratio, and it was actually an accident at Brooklands in a three-wheeled Morgan that stopped. Three-wheel cars got banned from racing, and at that point, and also with the demand for four-wheel cars, Morgan decided to build a four-wheel car with an engine in a conventional manner, and that was in the 1930s. And the first car was the Morgan 4-4, and that meant four wheels and a four-cylinder engine, and that was the first cars. This is a Plus 4, which was a later model, and this car has a standard Vanguard engine. Now, standard became Triumph. So the standard Vanguard engine at the time was used in this car, and it was also used in the early TR models, particularly the TR3 and actually the TR4, when it was a slightly bigger engine then. It was a 2.2 litre engine as opposed to the 2088cc one that we have in this car. And as it was built later, it also had twin carburetors. Now I'm getting geeky now, and I know I promised I wouldn't. So I'm going to show the engine to you. Now, the standard Vanguard engine was also used in the massive Ferguson tractor, the little grey tractor, and it was used in that. So it was an incredibly bomb-proof and strong engine, and it has lots of low-down torque and power, and it really, really is beautifully powered along. And I think that Morgan used actually the standard engine in many models right up to the 60s, and actually friends of mine that race historic Morgans use this engine as a race prepared engine. It can produce over 200 horsepower, which is amazing. That's with a steel crank, fully balanced, and built as a race engine. And yeah, they're just bomb-proof engines, and actually, like I say, they do a really good job. So that's the standard Vanguard engine with its Solex carburetor, single carburetor. A lot of these cars are later being converted to twin SU, but this is the original, and it's perfectly adequate, and it really performs as well as you want it to. You wouldn't want any more power. Interestingly as well, this particular car, this is a water header tank. It's been converted to a sealed water system with an electric water pump, which isn't standard, but again, it just makes it very usable in modern traffic conditions, particularly on a hot day in a traffic jam where this car would otherwise just overheat. It wasn't designed for that kind of environment. So yeah, so there's our standard Vanguard engine, all in there, and this engine was rebuilt about 8,000 miles ago, and the gearbox as well. Now the gearbox is a Moss gearbox, and it has 4 speeds and 3 synchromesh, which means there's no synchromesh in first gear, so you have to be stationary before you engage first gear, and it has reverse gear. And it's a lovely notchy gearbox. It's a beautiful car to drive, and quintessential sports car, British English sports car, lovely thing. So there we go. So if you like what we're doing, please like it, share it and subscribe to it, and hopefully we'll see you again. And don't forget, everything's also on our website, and there's if you're a member of the Platinum Rewards Club, you can win free tickets to win one of our cars as well. So we hope we're giving you really good value for money, and we look forward to seeing you again.